Hi, everybody. This is Emily Brooks and John Myers from Write Better Together.
Hey, everybody.
And we wanted to share an opportunity with you all. Even though we can't make it because of prior commitments, we wanted to let you all know about a writing retreat coming up with WriterCon.
So the folks at WriterCon, which happens every September, are actually having a July Writers Retreat at Canebrake. Canebrake Resort is in Wagoner, Oklahoma on Fort Gibson Lake. It's a 300-acre complex. It's beautiful. There is a link on their website. So you want to go to writercon.com/retreat, and it'll show you all the choices that you have. So you can pick single occupancy, double occupancy, triple occupancy. You can pick a hotel room versus a cabin. There's different meal plans that you can pick. And of course, there's writer instruction. No matter what your genre is, there's something there for you. And we hope that you can make it.
Sounds fantastic.
It does. Welcome, everybody, to Write Better Together. I'm John Myers. Hey, look, everybody, it's Emily Brooks.
Hello, John Myers.
Hey, what are we going to talk about today?
We're talking about overcoming your fear of failure, and especially when it comes to querying agents.
What if I don't have a fear of failure?
That is wonderful.
Bring in Winnie.
Teach us.
I don't know. I don't know if that's teachable, but bring in Winnie. Maybe she has a fear of failure.
Winnie,
So did you get out of your bubble? Oh, wait, you got to tell us what we're going to talk about first. I'm ready to hear about your bubble.
Before that, we're going to have a call to action response. Then after our topic, I'm going to share a new fact with John Myers. I almost said what it was because it was written down.
Do that.
We're going to have a new call to action, and then we're going to have the final act.
Yay.
Which is a surprise.
Of course.
Yeah. How did you get out of your bubble?
Oh, you want me to go first? So last night, there's actually a learning objective to this one. Last night was it's morphing into something else, but it was my final writers class with the acclaimed award-winning novelist. And we all brought things to be read.
Nice.
And they read them. Well, they read 6 of them, and mine was one of them. And they were all really good in different ways. I was shocked how good they were, because most of the people there don't ever, and I'll believe it or not, I'll put myself in most of the people don't talk that much during the session. There's a couple people that ask a million questions, and then I mean, I've asked a question or two, and but I don't talk that much in that. I'm just there to absorb, right? And so it was cool to hear everyone's what they wrote.
Yeah.
She thought my characterization was super strong.
Nice.
And that that was probably the best compliment. The first 3 writings, I'll call them, because they were all different. And mine was one of those. And and this lady sitting next to me, like after like the 5th or 6th one, she was like, "Was that one yours?" I'm like, no, it was like didn't sound anything like mine. But for some reason, she didn't want to say. They were all anonymous, which I'm fine.
Oh.
Like they didn't need to be. Like I'm fine. Like I didn't need mine to be anonymous, but since they were all anonymous, then I didn't want to like break the thing. But anyway, my point was the first 3, so it's only the first page of a thing, right? Of a chapter, or the first page of a screenplay. I didn't write a screenplay, but whatever it was only the first page. And her note for the first 3 was that you don't want to ring the same bell twice. And I loved that. And then so if there's 46 lines on the first page or 23 lines on the first page, if whether you double space or what, you don't want to make the same point twice on the first page. And I've never heard it said that way, and I love that. And in terms of how that one applied to mine, because even though this was a piece of prose and I'm a screenwriter, I suspect that she thought I was ringing the same bell twice when I wasn't, because I was planting things that would pop up later. And so there's in this scene, this woman is measuring a crate, like a milk crate. And so in the course of one page of 400 words or whatever, she goes back to measuring the crate. She goes back to measuring the crate 3 times. And but there's something revealed in each. You just don't know that in the first page, right?
Oh,
So
yeah.
there's a reason that she goes back to that, and the things that she is, the things that those things that she was saying, all will matter later.
The rule of 3 is that?
I did
Open
employ the
it 3
rule of
times.
3, but
Yeah.
so it appeared that I was ringing the bell 3
Yeah.
times or twice, and heard to use her vernacular when I really wasn't. But I didn't like. It's still a good note.
It is. Yeah, that's a really good good advice.
Yeah, I thought
'Cause
so.
I just went to the writing conference where they had the query panel where they were reading, or the agent panel when they were reading first pages, and you can just learn a lot in one page. You can really pack it with character and setting and really hint at what the story is going to be about.
But you knew going in it was going to be one page, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, it was. I'm trying to be nice. We didn't know it was only going to be one page, right? And so,
Yeah.
some question that someone had might have been answered on the second line on page 2, right?
Yeah,
And
and that's really tough, especially when you know agents are looking at that first page. Speaking of our topic today, that first page is so important.
yeah, and so she, the author, the acclaimed author, she describes it as that's your handshake, right?
Yeah,
And you don't get a second chance at a handshake. And she's
yeah,
100% right. I'm just saying, that going into into your session, you knew it was one page only,
hmm,
where we didn't really know that it was only
yeah,
going to be one page, but
yeah,
it's okay. It's still there was still much to be learned.
sure.
All right, what'd you do outside of your bubble?
Well, so I actually I couldn't think of a story for today, and then I happened to go to the grocery store this morning, and usually nothing happens, but there are a lot of people I know who frequent the same grocery store, and I ran into my friend Austin. I run into him probably more than anybody else. We call them Austin out in the wild moments because we'll be driving and just see him crossing the street, like he's just out in the wild.
He's everywhere.
Which actually is one of the things that's great about Austin. I actually really want him to be on this podcast because he's a screenwriter and he is like one of the best networkers. Every time I talk to him, he's like, "Oh yeah, I just went to this conference and I'm going to this other conference and I just talked to this producer and this director and I'm sharing, or I met this actress." And he's always got these stories of how he is getting out of his bubble and pursuing things. And so that was really inspiring to me today. And like, even though I will say so about these grocery store run-ins. So I didn't intend to get out of my bubble today. In fact, most of the time when I run into people outside of like when I don't intend to, there are times I will confess when I will walk the other way and pretend like I didn't see them because I'm not in the mood to talk to anybody. But today I was like, no, I'm going to talk to Austin. I haven't seen him in a while. It'd be really good to talk to him,
And I need
especially
a
since we
story for
always
the
have
podcast.
yes. We always have something to share about writing that's really encouraging to me because we're really we're in this together. And so I'm glad. I'm glad that I didn't go the other way and I decided to talk to him because it was nice. And he's awesome.
So, just off the top of your head, I'm putting you on the spot. if we have him on, we should. It sounds like we should have him on. What would you have him talk about? Just
I would love to
first
have him talk
impression.
about, huh?
Just first impression, like
Oh,
the
I
first.
mean, I told him like I would love to have you on to talk about networking because
Yeah, that's what I thought
yeah,
when
like he's
the way you
just
described it.
so good at talking to other people. um and yeah, like just putting himself out there. He's so good at it.
Does he have a podcast?
No,
Well, there
but
you
he
go.
was excited about the idea of being on ours, so
Yeah, we should put that on there. On the
for sure. Be looking out for that in the far future after we've got a lot of things lined up, but maybe by the end of the year we'll have awesome.
If you people only knew, maybe there's time for him in December.
Yeah, right. We've got a lot of plans.
No, I'm serious though. We should have him on.
Yeah, me too.
All right.
All right, what's our call to action responses today? I know you have one and I have one.
Let me do this one first because it's handwritten for you people that aren't in your car, and I don't know that I can read this.
And speaking of people
So
who are going to be on
Adrian
the podcast,
Sanders, a guest that's coming on the show soon. We're actually recording it next week, and but who knows when you're going to see it. And so she responded to when we asked you all to tell us what your quote unquote best or favorite or most impactful writing advice was. And this is the advice that she got from Jessica Jacobs, the acclaimed poet, memoirist. And Jessica wrote this in the front matter of her book to Adrian. To Adrian, such a pleasure to meet you to talk about writing. This is not Jessica's problem that I can't read very well. I agree with Nicola about the necessity of sitting in your chair and writing and write enough that you can find your way to the heart of your poem. That used to be Bob Sine's catchphrase, get your blank in the chair or
yeah.
in the seat.
Yep.
And you don't get up until you accomplish something. What do you think about that advice?
I think it's good. I've heard that a lot as well, and it's harder than it sounds. So I think it's good advice because it may seem very just like, well, of course you have to sit down and just write. But then on the day to day, you have to actually motivate yourself to do it. But when you do it, what I've learned is that even if you sit down for a couple minutes a day, you've put the story in your head. And then the rest of the day you can still continue to work on it. So like if I haven't written for a long time, then the story's not in my head anymore. And so I have to consistently look at it every day to get it back in my head where I'm consistently thinking about it.
Interesting. So that brings up and if you didn't see it, it's because I just sent it. Did you see that second neurologist clip that I sent?
No.
Okay, so I sent you one. I think she's a writer quoting another neurologist, and she said that the reason that our brain likes stories and she didn't talk about how it forms stories, but the reason is because exactly what you just said, that it conditions our brain to put us, we're living the story, right? So and so it puts us through scenarios, and we'll do an afterthoughts about this, so I could give you the 2-sentence version.
Yeah, I'm
It
already
puts
like,
us
oh, this is a whole thing that we could talk
it
about.
puts us through scenarios that, you know, some protagonist in a novel or in a film. What if I was in that situation? We can't not think that while we're reading the book or watching the
Yeah.
film. And
Yeah.
then later in our life, 10 years later, because it's part of our cultural inventory, she doesn't say that, we actually employ that.
Mhm.
So it was not consciously, we didn't read this novel to learn how to survive the zombie apocalypse, but it gives us, oh, do I have water stocked up? Or, it puts things into our brain
And
that teach
and
us
that
how to live.
actually, so this is kind of jumping ahead, but I was listening to another writing podcast. Oh dear.
There's more than one.
It was the novel marketing podcast, and they were talking about how they handle querying and rejections. And one of the things they said towards the end was, and also, this was Thomas Umstattd who goes, read fantasy novels or read novels that have a lot of like have characters dealing with hard things, because it really puts things in perspective. Like, oh dear, I didn't get this thing published. And it's like, well, this person has to fight dragons. But you put yourself in the situations, and it teaches you, like, it reminds you to be courageous and to be a person of character and all of those things. The other part of that advice that Adrian shared was keep writing until you get to the heart of your poem. And I think that that's really good advice too, that sometimes you don't know where you like what you want to say until you just write and write and write, and then you go, oh, that was it, that's what I wanted to say.
And then your editor says, did we really need that big? so so you wrote a story about I don't know, going to buy a fountain pen, because fountain pens are on my brain, and and
I wonder why.
then you run into Austin at the fountain pen store, and it
Yeah.
turns into, I don't know, his wife and kids. I don't know if he has his wife and kids, and there's a learning moment there, and you write all that up, and then your editor says, do we need the fountain pen part? Right.
Right, exactly. There's usually when you're first writing something, you can cut several pages, or if it's a poem, several stanzas, like, because it just takes a while to get to the point where you're like, yeah, this is where this starts. Man, this podcast has already been rich with advice, and we haven't even gotten to the main thing yet.
Well, you have to read the other thing.
Okay, I'll read. So my sister,
Your
thank you,
sister.
Bethany. She really helped us out and responded to some things. So I'll respond to this short one that she did.
Good thing.
We
Good thing I
talked
believe
about.
in nepotism. Good thing
I
I am
know,
pro
right?
nepotism.
um, she loves our podcast, and she's our biggest fan.
Yay.
Um, we had talked about how whales have language in the episode with Pinar, and she also had talked about she speaks a lot of language, and so we said, what's the language that you speak, or even if it's not like a specific dialect, but like what are the quote unquote languages that you speak? And this one is so Bethany. It says, is the language of movies a thing? Because I have a movie quote for just about any and every situation you can think of. And if a movie quote doesn't fit, I will quote The Office. And this is my family, like, we speak in quotes. We really do have a quote for everything, and Bethany especially. Do you
That's
do that?
amazing.
Do you speak in quotes?
I think in quotes, but I don't remember them well enough
Hmm.
to spit them out in the moment.
Yeah. You also have to know your audience. Like, sometimes I want to quote something around somebody, and then I'm like, they probably have never seen that. I don't know if they'll get it. But it's great when you meet a friend and you can do a quote and they go, I've seen that. I get it.
Exactly.
It's an automatic connection.
Yep. That's a good one.
So, our main topic today is last time we talked about the anxiety that you might have going into conferences and pitching to agents and networking, also just anxiety in general. So, today we wanted to talk about the aftermath of that, the courage that it takes, first of all, to query, and then also, what do you do when all of those queries are sent out and you're waiting on responses, and what do you do when you get responses? Um, and so I thought I would start off with I guess, a story. I wrote on my blog post recently about rejections or on my blog post, goodness, on my blog, about rejections that I got and how I did not take it as well as I wanted to, especially knowing that this episode was coming up. I was like, this is embarrassing. Why can't I just handle this? And one of the things I learned was, first of all, we're really hard on ourselves, especially me. But we can be really hard on ourselves and think, well, I shouldn't be feeling this. Mind over matter. But sometimes you just need to feel something, and that's okay. Like, it's okay to just sit and feel something because that actually helps you move on faster. So that's my first advice is feel the feelings, feel all the feelings.
Well, and that you I don't want to get ahead of myself. That that feeling, it when you said move on, the anti-productive traits or elements of that feeling, you move on from them, but you don't move on from the feeling. You funnel that
Right.
feeling, channel that feeling into creativity. You like don't
Sure.
get rid of the feel. Like you don't move on from the feeling. You just keep it because
Sure.
it's always the feeling is the feeling, and this other element I'm going to talk about in a little bit is always going to be there.
Yeah. Yeah, there and that's just your like that's just being human. You can
Ex-
you can do all the things and you are still going to feel emotions, and so don't shame yourself for it, just let yourself feel it. So that's with um I guess I kind of jumped ahead because I'm talking about rejection all of a sudden, but I just wanted to name that to say that this conversation, I'm coming from a point of I know that this is uncomfortable. To me, whenever I start querying something, I just get so stressed out. I don't like it. I don't like the weight. I don't like when I mean I've queried novels that people just wouldn't give any responses to. So you get some responses that are normally form letters, and then you get others that just never respond, and it's a very frustrating process. And so um, and I think, can I just take a pause here and say that this is a little bit different for screenwriters? Do you want to explain how
so
this might be
sure.
different for screenwriters, the language that I'm using?
So screenwriters, um, and I'll use an example in a later where that when you do get an answer, but it's very common to not hear anything back,
Yeah.
and when you do, it's a form letter, and
Hmm.
unless they want, and people will look at it, they'll look for hope in that form letter, and they're like, well, what if I did? No, if they wanted to read it, they would say, yeah, please go ahead and send it and read it. So
Yep.
unless they say, yeah, send it to me, then then they don't want to read it.
Yeah.
And oh well, they
And
next.
it's a very subjective thing, and we could talk about the industry and we could talk about the process of querying, but this particular episode, it's what do you do? So some of the best advice that I have heard is that as soon as you start querying one project, start another project if you haven't already. Because when you're working on a new project, you remember why you're doing this. Again, that intrinsic motivation, we've talked about that multiple times, but you're going back to this is why I love this. I'm working on this project. It's exciting. For me, even sometimes I'll go, man, this one's so much better. If I don't hear anything from the other one, at least I've got this one. Surely this one will be the one. And so it's ensuring that not only are you being continuing to be productive, you're not just going to wait 6 months to work on anything. It's also kind of just setting that other book aside and going, okay, I have no control over that. I'm going to focus on this next project. Do you do this?
So yes and no. So I did. It wasn't a query, but so these guys that used to have a YouTube show, and now they're starting a podcast, and I'll just call them Lucas and Charles. But Charles used to work for Jerry Bruckheimer, and so every big giant blockbuster Jerry uh, Bruckheimer film that you've ever seen. He worked for him, and so they opened up kind of like what we're going to do with swapping our projects. They opened up this thing where send us something,
Mm.
and if we accept it, then we'll critique it right in front of you on our podcast.
Wow.
And so this was just yesterday, and and I told them that we have a podcast, and so if mine's chosen, it's good. We're both like they're coming on ours too,
Sure, yeah.
and and they can critique me in front of you, and because you're going to critique me as well. And anyway, so to answer your question, Mama Bear, I had to decide what to send them. And when you said, "Well, this new thing is better," I don't have that muscle of like, "Oh, I'm going to send them my best," because they're all good in their own
Mhm.
way. Like they're just different. And
Yeah.
so because I don't have any action one, but because and I don't know if Lucas is going to be the decision maker, or if he's going to decide with Charles, but I don't have an action one, or I would have sent an action one because that would seem most appropriate. And but I so I decided to send. So most of them are rom coms, and then I have a thriller, a supernatural thriller, but it's not that. I mean, it's not that scary. So I'm just supernatural things happen in it, and so I sent the one that I thought that they could comment upon the most.
Sure.
And so that was my decision. Like they're all tight stories, and so I didn't like, oh, this story is better than the other story.
I think
Or
uh,
I wouldn't have I'd still be working on it if it wasn't finished yet, right? And so I just wanted one that they would have a lot to talk about.
I think that's a good point because I think from my experience is that I'm at a point in my writing where every time I write a novel, it is generally better than the last one, because I'm growing as a writer and I'm learning what this takes. And so um, part of that is just me in the place that I'm at. And then part of it is also, even if it's not better, it's something that I get excited about it. So it's about keeping things fresh, I think.
Oh, and
For me.
100% when I say they're all quote unquote good is subjective. 100% whatever I wrote last month is better than what I wrote 10 years ago.
Sure.
And so but I still have a script from 10 years ago that gets refreshed every once in a while.
Hmm.
That it's still a fine story.
Yeah. And that's another thing too to keep in mind is that, if you're querying the first thing you've ever written, I wouldn't be too discouraged. I mean, you will feel discouraged. That's okay. But just remember, like everything you write is going to get better, and then also you can use those skills to go back and refresh those other things. So that's my first advice is, first advice, feel your feelings. Second advice, keep working on other projects. Third advice is, and I'm curious what John Myers is going to say about this one, is to remember that you're not defined by whatever happens. I think as creatives, sometimes we identify ourselves in our creative work. And so then if we're not published, then it feels like, well, who even am I, or what am I doing with my life? And it feels like it can feel like a crisis of identity in some ways. I heard this is terrible. I tried to find the episode and I couldn't. This was on the Middle Grade Ninja podcast. Back when I was writing middle grade, I was listening to this podcast and he was interviewing this woman who was she talked about how several of her stories didn't get published. And he was like, so how did you work through that? And she said, well, first of all, I just reminded myself that that's not my identity. She was like, my identity is that I'm a child of God and she's like, I've got all these other things that I do. This is something I love and I want to be successful at it, but this isn't like my like purpose in life, if that makes sense.
It makes sense, and I agree with that because like she said, she's a child of God. You have to know who you are,
Yeah.
period. I do uh I do identify as a writer, and but if a rejection doesn't mean I'm not a writer. If
Exactly.
I
That's what the next thing. Yeah.
if I strike out in a because we're such sports people, if I strike out in a baseball game,
Hmm.
first of all, what am I doing in a baseball game? And
What just happened?
who am I? If I strike out in a baseball game, it doesn't make me. I'm still a baseball player. I'm still in the
Right.
game, and so that doesn't. That one doesn't. I don't understand that one.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Because um, yes, and I've had to practice saying things like, "I'm a writer." Like when people ask, "What do you do?" I write. And there are no caveats. Like I don't have to explain any more than that. I am a writer. And so
And
the publication.
everyone on this bookshelf, there was a time when it was just a query, or
Yep.
it
Yeah.
hadn't been written yet, or their first book hadn't
Hmm.
come out yet. So that, I
Yeah.
mean,
Absolutely. So I think that's important, making sure. And for me, part of that means that, and this is different for everybody because we've talked about John Myers, how um, you don't really have like other hobbies. Like you are a writer, like first and foremost. For me, for my mental health, it's helpful to have other things that I'm interested in, other things that I'm finding life and satisfaction in, um, because writing isn't enough for me. Like I get a lot of satisfaction out of writing, but um, it's helpful for me to have those other things too. Especially again when you're dealing with querying.
I'm gonna go out on a limb, bird woman, um, and so do you appreciate that I'm going out on a limb because you appreciate birds? Do
Hmm.
you identify more as a writer or as a teacher? I'm gonna say writer.
Oh, definitely a writer. Teacher, I
So
didn't even think I was going to be a teacher.
there you go. So I
Yeah.
went out on the proper limb.
Yeah. No, that's a great question. Um, but I do think about so this is something that I guess this feels very college or high school, but maybe you didn't have this experience, but I had this experience where they would be like, "What's going to be on your tombstone?" Um, First of all, I'm not going to have a tombstone. I don't think. I don't think that's in my plans. But if I did, it's probably not going to say like New York Times best-selling author,
My
right?
tombs my tombstone is gonna say, "What are you looking at?"
That's awesome. Call to action. What's going to be on your tombstone?
Yep.
So it's helpful, at least for me, to think about what are those other things that are important and that give me purpose. Um, the other thing is we've talked about this before as my favorite writing advice is that you can only focus on what you can control, right? So you can control how many queries you send out. You can control how the quality of those queries. Have you had other people look at it? Are you if you're too afraid, by the way, of having somebody look at your query or your first pages, don't have an agent be the first one to read it. Have other people read it. But you can control that the quality. You can control how much you believe in the story. You can control so many things, but you can't control what the agents are going to say. So that is something that we have to learn to let go of.
So Blake Snyder says if you're not sharing your story like to everyone at the grocery store and the people at the gas pump and just like
Yeah.
everywhere, that you're not sharing the story that you're working on, that you don't have confidence in your own story.
Mm,
So
that's really good.
that can be an indication that, well, he doesn't say it anymore because he's dead now, but when he was still alive, that can be an indication that it's not ready,
Yeah.
but it also could be an indication that you just have low confidence.
Yeah. And I've been there where I'm like, I don't want anybody to read it. I just want to send it to agents and they'll be the ones who tell me that it's good or bad. And don't do that. Have other people, um, people that you really trust, people who are really good readers or good writers, look over your work before sending it
So
out.
and I used to be that way too, where only like I only let my beta readers read it because I didn't want whatever
Mm-hmm.
ruffians reading it. I don't know who
Yes.
ruffians are, but Jammin says let everyone, like, let your family, let your mom read, let your family read it, because they're the audience,
Yeah.
and so uh, and
Readers sometimes have the best, like, sometimes readers, people who don't write, give wonderful feedback. Actually, this is kind of a side thing, but a lot of advice will tell you to get advice from people that are not just your parents, right? They're like, don't just get advice from your parents because they're just going to tell you they love it because they love you. My parents are fantastic at giving feedback, and they're very honest. So that advice, it depends. But
yeah,
definitely find someone to read it. Yeah.
yes.
So, John Myers, if you're okay with me asking, so this is all how I deal with this process because I'm a fairly emotional person and I have a lot of fears and I hate the idea of failure and I feel embarrassed when I feel like I failed. You said you don't really have that fear factor, but are there still things that you do um, experience um, or are there things that you do during these times? I don't know if I asked that well, but you know what I mean, I think.
So there's things that I should do that I don't do, but the reason I don't do them, I think, are a positive. And then when do I go on my rant? Can I go on my rant after I say
Yeah.
what that is?
Yes, I've
Okay.
been waiting for this. Yes.
It's not really a rant, but so there are people, we know some of them, who keep spreadsheets of when they sent out their submission. Do you do this?
I do,
And
yeah.
okay, I should do that. And and so but I don't. And and so I know that it's been 6 months or 6 weeks or whatever, and I should do that. The reason I don't do that is because you send it off and then you forget about it. And so that there's a positive to that. And
Absolutely. Can I just say that
uh-huh.
that is another great point of advice? Don't keep going back to your spreadsheet because I've done that before where it's like every day I'm checking my email, I'm checking my spreadsheet, I'm looking at how many rejections do I have, how many, like, and I think that that's a great advice to just don't think about it. You've done the thing. There's nothing you can do.
Yeah, it's out of your control, so you do. And to answer your earlier question, do you go on to the next project? I'm always in the middle of a bunch of projects.
Hmm.
So yes, but I don't stop. Like if I read in Variety or Hollywood Reporter that some little indie is doing this or that, and it sounds like it's in my same genre, I'll go
Hmm.
look them up and see if I can find a name on IMDb Pro or something, and and query.
Hmm.
So we haven't told people why you query. Now I'm going to go on a sidetrack. Now we're gonna have a 2 hour episode. But the reason you query is because they don't take unsolicited material. And so if you send a query with just Bob Signs in this book has the
Nice.
perfect query letter. That's not the way it works. Is the name is the title of the book. His query letter works really well. You want him to be able to read it, and he says 24 seconds, but in less than 30 seconds. And it's just your log line and your contact information. They don't care about you won the East Poughkeepsie
Yeah.
screen third place in the East Poughkeepsie Northern Western Carolina film festival. And uh so you just tell them the log line, and then if they ask you to send the script, then you do. And
It is a
so
little different for fiction and then nonfiction as well. So definitely look at the guidelines for whoever you're querying because they'll be more specific about what they're asking for.
correct. And usually like with publishers, their query uh
Letter, like they're full on letters, and a lot of times they ask for pages as well.
yeah, and they have the criteria on their website is what I was
Yeah,
going to
they do.
say, where you don't know, like, if you like the movie The Favorite, you don't know. Well, that's a bigger one, but it's not a small indie house. But anyway, you don't know what the small indie house is, what they're looking for, or anything of that. So you just go to IMDb Pro. You try to find the right person, and because an assistant's going to read the query letter anyway, and then you send it off. So I know someone who used this letter 10 times, the letter out of this book, a brand new screenwriter who'd only been screenwriting for a year, and got 7 read requests out of 10.
Wow.
That never, ever, never, ever, never happens. So if you send 100, you usually get 3 or 4 read requests out of 100. And
Wow.
so, John Myers, have you been that successful? No, because I haven't only sent 10, right? So I don't know how to, like, did my first 10 get 7 read requests? No, but I
Right.
didn't measure it that way. I sent 150 or whatever, right?
Right.
And you get some read requests. 3 or 4 is good, and then you get
Yeah.
maybe 10 or 12 rejections, and then 80 of them you never hear anything.
Yeah,
And so
absolutely.
you get 3 or 4 read requests, 10 or 12 rejections, and an 80 nothing, and that's just
Yeah.
normal. And so that's it's out of your control, and it's normal. So the thing that I wanted to talk about is this: we're talking about rejection and acceptance, and I don't know how to change this, but that just should have never been framed that way, ever. Whoever wrote the first rejection letter, shame on them. Whoever complained about the first rejection letter, receiving it, shame on them, because that's not who that binary of rejection and acceptance, that's not who we are as writers. Most of us are intrinsically motivated, right? And so
Mm,
there's value in becoming a better person in the process. And
yes.
right, we come, and that's where the value is in the process. And so the
Mm,
process of putting together a book proposal that could be 30 pages, or a query letter that could be 1 page, that's the thing.
yeah.
That's the thing with the intrinsic value. And the other thing out of your control, when you mail it off, that mail it off like I live in the 1900s. When you mail it
I
off,
did have to do that once. I legitimately did that once.
um, I, I have, I still have a letter where I mailed one off because don't ever. I'm not going to even tell this story. I'll tell it in a future episode, because now I
Sure.
feel inauthentic by holding the story back. Where was I?
When you send off your letter.
Oh, okay. Yeah. And so that's the accomplishment.
Yes.
And so there is no rejection or acceptance. The submission is the accomplishment. That's the only thing that you're responsible for. You're not responsible for that the guy you sent it to, or the woman you sent it to, doesn't have enough money in their bank account, or
Right.
doesn't know the right people to make this story. Um, uh, I have someone on one of my craziest stories, and um and I really respect her, and she's like, man, if this were something different, I know the people that would finance it, but who's going to finance this crazy story? But but I'm not going to give up either. And
Hmm.
is what she said. I'm not going to give up on looking.
Yeah.
It's gonna be 10 years before I find someone that wants to finance this one specific crazy story. um and so, but no, I can't do anything about that. and
Yeah.
so um and so there's all those uncontrollable variables, and
Hmm.
it should have never. The accomplishment is in the doing. We talk about that all the time on this podcast. And so this rejection and acceptance letter hooey is like in violation
Yeah.
uh, of that core belief.
Yeah. We talked in a previous episode about product. Like, is your work a product, or um is it
Well,
art?
we're creatives. We create.
Yeah,
We're
we
not
create.
we're not
And
bean counters. We're not accountants.
yeah. Um but it reminded me that someone said, I don't remember where this is the day where I'm referencing things that I can't remember. Um you are the product. So like when you are writing something and you become a better person, like that is that is intrinsically valuable. Doesn't mean it's
Yes.
not hard. Again, we're not trying to like shove down all of the feelings that come with this, but
Oh,
this is
correct.
yeah.
It just
It
it just is.
just
This is like there's
is.
oxygen in the air, which this is gonna lead. That was the perfect lead up into what I'm gonna say next. And but it's just there. It's
Mhm.
like, oh, I went in the ocean and I got wet. Well, duh, that's the ocean, right? That's just what it is.
Yeah.
And um that's not even that's not your job. You're not the person with the rubber stamp going reject, right? That's their job because
Yeah.
they're all money people. Even if it's publishing, they're money people. Even if it's a small press, they're not going to be like, oh, I love this. I know it's going to lose money.
Right.
let's let's print 5,000 of these, and they're not going to do that. And
Right.
that's not our job. Our job is to create.
Yeah.
You can be aware of the market, and but you
Mhm.
can't write for the market because whatever's in the market now is by the time you're done writing it, and that's 10 years from now. Or I
Yeah.
mean, not 10 years to write it, but by the time something happens with it, it's 10 years from now.
Mhm.
So it's time for Sunday school, people. um, so in I got to turn the extra light on for this. So in your Insta reel that you sent out, and there were two things in it. So everyone needs to follow Emily's blog. This is a commercial for her blog.
Aw.
The second thing you said a sentence about pressure, and then you said breathe.
Mhm.
What was that sentence?
Take the pressure off.
Take the pressure off and
Yeah.
breathe. Ding,
Breathe.
ding, ding, goosebumps. So in and this is true whether you're a believer or not. This is still true. It's still really there, and the translation is still true. So in John 16:33, in
Mhm.
this world you will have trouble. Do you know what the root word of that trouble is?
No.
That it is the root word for that is crushing pressure.
Oh,
and
wow.
it's used, I don't know, in the Bible maybe 7 times, and there's also instances of those 6, 7, 5 times. I'm not a Bible scholar, I just know some of the definitions of the words. And so where it's crushing pressure from a crowd, like when you're in a where you're so crowded that you're crushed. And me, I like to be socially distanced. and uh and so but did you notice what it says? In this world, you will have trouble.
You
It
will.
doesn't say you can put it behind you, or it's always going to be there. And so you're always going to have that crushing pressure that you were
Yeah.
talking about in that little meme. Part two
Mhm.
of that is so in 2 Corinthians 4:7, it says, we are hard pressed on every side, but not crushed. So
Yo,
again,
yeah.
it's crushing pressure.
Mhm.
Okay. So what do you do about that? Then the advice that you gave in the previous anxiety thing about exposure, right?
Yeah.
When something is never going to go away, and if after the Last Supper Jesus told those guys, hey, you're gonna have trouble. Like,
Yeah.
if he told them it's always gonna be there, it's
And then they
always gonna be
did.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so the only thing you can have is exposure. I mean, that's
Mhm.
the only, because it's always going to be there. There's no putting it behind you, moving forward. One last thing, so using the hard pressed, crushed by a crowd thing in Psalm, this is before Jesus, right? Because in Psalms 118:5, it says, when hard pressed, again, that's crushing pressure, I cried to the Lord. He brought me into a spacious place. There's your socially distancing, right? So
Wow.
he can move you. He doesn't get rid of the crushing pressure, but he moves you to where you can breathe, like what
Yeah,
you said in
breathe.
your blog.
Yeah. And
So
don't be the one who puts the pressure on yourself, right? You're gonna
true,
experience pressure, but don't be the one who does it.
true. And
Yeah.
so if something's never going to go away, and and something can't be put behind you, because it's always going to be there, like the water in the ocean or the air that you breathe, then all you do is exposure. All you do is live with it. And
Mm-hmm.
you don't even try to, you can't control it, but you don't
Yeah.
even try to control it. So
Yeah.
recap your exposure advice.
And well, as part of that, I'm going to reference scripture now, but it's again the episode where Emily can't remember where things are from. Maybe you know where this is from. Okay, I'm going to have to actually just look it up real quick if that's
That's
okay.
fine.
I can
Um,
I can trim
Here,
the part where I'm
while
looking it
she
up.
looks that up, I will sing you a gospel song. No, not really.
Okay. I'm going to read, I actually have two scriptures now because I get them mixed up. So I'm going to read both of them. James 1, 2 through 4. Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. So, trials, it's that exposure to trials actually increases your perseverance. And then in Romans chapter 5, verses 3 through 5, it says, we also glory in our sufferings because we know that suffering produces perseverance, character, and character, hope. And so, again, with exposure, when we're experiencing these trials, that pressure, it's actually making us more. It increases our perseverance, which actually strengthens our character. And when you have character, it increases your hope. And I think that is partly because when you experience things and you can look back in the past and see that you got through them okay, you survived, you more than survived, that creates hope for the future.
Yeah, I think people. So the advice is go fail some more, right? Fail as much as you can.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, people will use that as oh, I don't want to say a prescription, but it's, you said it really well. It's a explanation of a reality more than it is go. It's not an imperative. Go do this. It's explaining that you're surrounded by oxygen and you're
Yeah.
surrounded by water in the ocean.
Yeah. Basically, this is going to happen. So take joy instead of despairing. Take joy because this is going to make you stronger.
If it doesn't kill you, it makes you stronger.
Exactly.
Good job.
Hey, John Myers.
Ah, yes.
Did you forget? Um, because the past two episodes have been about like
Oh no.
handling anxiety and fear
Oh,
and
okay.
things like that. Oh no, I'm not gonna like make you do, I don't know, I'm not gonna make you do anything. Do you know anything about rapid eye movement?
Do I?
Yeah.
I'm the I'm the internet's leading podcaster when it comes to the topic of rapid eye movement.
Do you may have heard of it as called REM, or if maybe you've heard of REM sleep.
I know REM, the band.
Oh, okay. So when I like years and years and years ago, I was watching a documentary about sleep and dreaming, and it talked about REM sleep. And REM sleep is the part of your sleep when your eyes. So if you ever catch somebody sleeping and their eyes are going back and forth under their eyelids,
How would I see their eyes going back and forth while they're sleeping?
through their because their eyelids, like, well, I mean, they're like their eyes would be closed, but you can still kind of see their eyes going back and forth.
Your poor husband.
Okay, so apparently you haven't witnessed that, but maybe our listeners have. So this is actually this is the time of night. It's also called active sleep or desynchronized sleep, or there's a whole bunch of different. It's basically the part of the stages of sleep when you're dreaming. And what they've discovered is that it's extremely important for your functioning, for your brain development, and for processing emotions. And in that documentary, I I keep referencing things I can't remember. The show notes will have it. It's a really old one, but they did a study. This is horrible, but they did a study on a rat, of course, to see what would happen if it didn't dream, and it like lost all sense of like survival instincts. On
Uh-oh.
a positive side, they did tests on people to see if they basically had them play a video game, and then some people they would sleep after that. Other people didn't, but the people who slept, when they came back to the video game, they were better at the game because something about REM sleep actually helps you process things and improve um, basic functioning. The reason why I'm bringing this up is because there's a type of therapy called EMDR therapy, which is called, it means eye movement desensitization and reprocessing therapy. And I actually did this um, years ago when I was in college. And it's fascinating because it's imitating that REM sleep and emotional processing, only you do it by stimulating your eyes to go back and forth, which you do through music. So some of you may have been like, you may have seen things like this going around on social media where if you put in headphones and you play a song, the song will go back and forth from one ear to the other, and it makes your eyes go back and forth. And the reason why this is helpful for therapy is that it kind of desensitizes, it's a desensitizing thing to whatever you're thinking about. That's pretty much it. Just the REM is really cool, and psychology is cool.
I learned something. Do you want to know about my internal struggle while you were talking about all that?
Yeah, you looked distracted.
Well, I had these and these googly eyes, and I was debating whether or not to put them back on Baggy, who is now
Oh, no.
deceased, but I couldn't violate the continuity of the show.
Oh man,
Um,
that's so funny.
so I do want to comment on what you said though.
Yeah,
Um, so you said when you don't dream for a while, you lose the ability. One loses the ability to process reality or process
it.
survival.
They
What?
know for sure that dreaming is beneficial in almost. It's almost like a training exercise in your brain.
So when I moved here, I've now lived here in December. It'll be 12 years, and to this undisclosed location. I didn't dream in 10 years. The first 10 years, I probably only dreamt twice. And
Well, you
so
don't
much so that
always
after
know that
about
you're
5 or
dreaming.
6 years ago, or it was noticeable, I'm like, man, I haven't had a dream since I lived in Ohio or wherever, since I lived in Minnesota or wherever I live. And uh, now I've dreamt, even this week, I've dreamt a lot. But
Yeah.
so was I not?
So I can't definitively answer this, but I feel like what I read before was that we don't always know or recognize that we're dreaming. So sometimes it depends on whether, like, how much you're waking up at night. Like, are you waking up in the middle of the dream? That may help you remember it. But yeah, you don't always know.
But you'd think after 6 years of no dreaming, you would remember one of them.
Yeah.
That's a long time. And
I
then
don't
I would
know. I
have one,
mean,
and then I wouldn't have one again for 4 years or something. But
it
now I,
also, like, if you're not dreaming, like, it could be that you're waking up right before or during REM sleep, and so you have to reset each time. That's what they did to the rat, as they woke him up right before he got into REM
oh,
sleep.
plus I never sleep, so that could have something to do with
Oh,
it.
the sleep is important.
Well, I learned something.
There you go. Maybe that's inspiring some story ideas. I don't know. Um, all right. We have a new call to action.
Yes.
So we talked about the importance of perseverance, of trying new things, putting yourself out there. And so we want you, how do we phrase this? We want you to get a no from something or somebody.
Yeah,
We
we
want
want
you
you
to,
to send a query somewhere
yeah,
and get a no.
yeah, send a query somewhere and get a no. And if it's not like a query for your writing, or it could be like you submit to a journal or a magazine. It could be you ask somebody to look at your work. Um, just put yourself out there, and maybe you'll get a yes, and you can tell us about that too.
Nope, we want them to get a no. No
Well, if
yeses.
you get a yes, keep going until you get a no.
Try harder
Try
until you
harder.
get a no.
So you can share any of the call to action responses in the response to our show notes. All of the episodes are at writebettertogether.com/podcast. You can also respond to our Facebook page, which is Write Better Together. Does that one have now in it? Write Better Together Now, or just Write Better
Facebook
Together?
has Write Better Together now.
Write Better Together Now Facebook page where we share our episodes, and then you can respond to our posts there, or you can email us at writebettertogethernow@gmail.com.
There you go.
And while you're at it, you can also
Ring
subscribe
the
to
bell.
our podcast wherever you listen to your podcasts, including YouTube. We would love for you to be to receive updates whenever we have new episodes, and also, if you feel like it, we would love for you to write a review so that other people can find us.
And if you have a small business or
Yes.
even your website or whatever, did you see Charlotte Winters shared her website?
Yes.
So yeah, and she's big time, man. And we have self promo Mondays on the Facebook page now. And so Lauren, who made these lovely things,
Yes.
no, I haven't mailed yours yet. That's
okay.
will be posting on there in case you need a crocheted critter.
Mm-hmm.
That I just held up the cows for people driving in their car that Lauren made us. And just whatever you have that's creative, put it there on Mondays. And that's all I have to say about that.
Absolutely.
Is it
All right.
game time now?
It is time for the final act.
Da-na-na. Before, I have to prepare you for a future final act. So before
intriguing. That's a good idea.
The reason you won't think it's a good idea when you see this. So the reason I haven't mailed this cow yet is because in the cow, I'm also mailing you this envelope.
Oh.
And it says, do not open until you are on camera playing the next game I have for you. And so you can't, I've even duct taped the back of it. You cannot open, and I'm serious. I underlined do not. So you know I'm serious. I underlined it. And so you have to open this on camera, and then the game will happen once you open this. Can you
feel like I'm
behave?
on Taskmaster. This is great.
Can you behave?
Yeah, I will.
Okay.
Oh, trust me. I was always the person who, like, when it was time for like my birthday or something, like I wasn't trying to figure out the gifts. I wasn't going to shake the presents and try to see, like, no, I like surprises. Okay. So my game for you hopefully is simple, I think. So we talked about Wes Anderson a lot.
Yes.
So first of all, what is your favorite Wes Anderson movie?
Dude, you
Or
can't
just a
that.
favorite? Because I don't like favorite questions.
So the favorite one is always whenever the newest one comes out. I always love that one the most. However, I'm gonna say Isle of Dogs again because
Right?
I think it's they're all well written in their own way, but I think it's the most I think it's the most entertaining, but still has some meat to it, thematic meat to it. And so it's an entertaining story that still has some weightiness to it.
All right. So we've talked a lot about genre on this podcast and the importance of genre. I have not seen The Isle of Dogs, which is really a shame after hearing you talk about it because it sounds amazing. What genre would you say it is? Like if you, or what genre elements? Like does it have mystery,
Talking dog movie. No.
romance? Well, like what kind of like mystery, romance, horror?
So there is a little uh, flirtation love story in
Okay.
there. It's a story of survival. It's a story. It's a cultural. Um, uh, two when two cultures collide, when two ideologies collide. Um, if it were a novel, it would be literary fiction. Um, and but it's Wes Anderson, so there's also funny things in it,
Yeah.
and
So a lot of stories will have multiple genres. Like it might have a heist, it might have and by genre, I'm not talking about like what you find on the bookshelf. I'm talking about like elemental genres. Um, so what I thought we could do for this game is add a new genre to Isle of Dogs. What would it look like if you changed Isle of Dogs to, I was going to give you an example, but then I thought I don't want to force you into one. So I was going to say horror, but I don't want to force you into it. So if you have another idea of like, what if it was fantasy? Like, what if it was science fiction? Um, I will be just judging this based on your execution.
my
I know you
prize
don't,
will be.
the prize will be On Becoming a Novelist by John Gardner,
Oh wow.
which I'm putting
Um,
in the bookshop as a fantastic resource for writing novels. But also, he's really good about talking about sentence structure and like beauty in writing and plotting. Like it's a great book.
you know the storybook, not a storybook, but the book about story that on the Carrie Drobin episode.
Oh yeah,
Uh, I read this thing this morning. Top 3 books that screenwriters should read, and that was one of them.
nice.
Um, gosh, I don't know, because there's elements of like there's even like ancient history opening.
So it
Like,
already has just like a ton of stuff going on in it.
gee,
Did I make this too hard?
you always make them hard. At least I get a book this time. Last time you're like, you don't need prizes. Who needs prizes?
I gave you
Everyone's a
sourdough
winner.
bread.
Everyone's a winner. Who needs prizes? But then on a previous episode, you were like, how many points do I get? Where are my points? Um, let's uh let's change Moonrise Kingdom.
Okay.
Have you seen that one?
Yes.
Okay. Let's change that one.
Okay.
Because it doesn't do
You're right.
it doesn't do as much.
Yeah.
And what does it do? Tell our listeners what it does do.
I would say there's some adventure and there's some romance.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Let's change it to, I would say mystery, but there is a little mystery in it too.
But it could be more so.
Let's change it into a farce. And
Yes.
so, and
Okay.
so it's been a while since I've seen it. Does it, I'm sure it has a framing device, but it doesn't have a framing device like The Life Aquatic with Steve Zissou, where they're like going from the different levels of the submarine to the
Right.
they're going through all the different levels. Okay, this is like, I think this is a crime to do this to a Wes Anderson film.
Oh no.
We should be
Well,
doing this
no, it's
to,
not to make the story better. It's to think about genre elements.
okay. We should be doing this to Air Bud.
Oh my goodness.
So okay, so it's Moonrise Kingdom, and it's the little kids, and they're in their flirtatious pen pals stage, but they're going in and out of rooms like crazy, and because that's very Wes Anderson-y to go in and out of the room, even on the Mont Blanc commercial,
Mm-hmm.
they're going in from one room to the other, and anytime there's a plot development, it's in a different room, and it comes, we show don't tell. So it comes from the kids. The kids are on different levels. You can't see my hands if you're driving in your car, but the kids are at different levels in this mock-up house, and they keep missing each other, and but every time they go into a new room, they crash into someone, Bruce Willis or whoever they crash into, and a plot development spills out of them. There you go.
There you go.
Give me my book.
You may have
Fax it to me.
Awesome. How do we end this?
We couldn't have done it.
We couldn't have done it without you.
Yay. Hey, Emily. John Myers, I'm back. Say hi.
Hi.
Why am I back? Because I have a correction to make. I'm never wrong. No, Emily's never wrong. But earlier in this episode, I wasn't wrong, but I felt upon reflection, I felt like I was incomplete. And here's the correction. So I had talked about John 16:33, and it was where, in the part of the conversation where the final dinner, the final supper's over, the Last Supper, and he's just talking to them. And I made this statement as that he was just explaining the reality that in this world you will have trouble. And that's a reality. I made the statement, it wasn't an edict, and it wasn't a command, it wasn't an imperative, and it wasn't. So that what I said still applies. It's not wrong. However, the next word, but, is what comes after that is take heart, and the take heart is an imperative, right? And so that's why I said that I felt like it wasn't wrong, but it was incomplete. And so that but is an adversative, and in an adversative, and there's, believe it or not, there's 490 of them in the Bible, of the but that's an adversative. There's two kinds of buts. One is where both things on both sides, both sentences on both sides of the but are equal, and but an adversative is one is weightier than the other. And so in this case, in this world you will have trouble, but adversative, this other thing is more powerful. The thing that comes after the but is more powerful, and that's take heart. And it's not take heart, you're going to make it through. It's like an active, you go, Emily, you go take heart. Like it's a command, because he was telling the guys, this is an active, I want you to go do this. And so that's the correction I need to make. What do you think about that?
I love it.
Yeah, take heart. There you go.
There you go.